Okay, this is post 4. Should we say our letters?
I don't think it matters.
Go for
Yeah.
it. Okay, so
This quarter we started everyone. We were like, hi, I'm blah, and I'm blah.
I think she knows who we are.
Yeah, since we're not.
Okay, so we all had to give a summary, right? Of the first part. And everyone has totally different things. Like,
Really?
the way that they went about giving the summary was very different. So Christy and I gave like 3 to 4 sentences that were just like the basic. You guys like went into more detail, which is cool. But,
I just went that because the thing said give a 3 to 4
yeah,
sentence.
Yeah.
same.
I just tried to capture like the main points. I think of like what I read.
Mhm.
I don't know.
So
What I understood from it.
basically, just that how environment plays into cognitive development.
Yeah.
Like we've been talking about since psych.
Yeah, exactly.
Since
Like
class, right?
Yeah.
Like the same thing that we've gone over. Yes.
I think part of why mine was a bit more in depth was because I really got into the question about which of the different experiments kind of like brought that into light.
Right.
There are several of them that I thought were super cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
The 2 I mentioned was the one where like the kids from different cultures were asked to sort the
Alive and living.
Yeah, I
stuff.
talked about that one.
Cool.
And like the Mayan kids were like the sun is living, the storms are living.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool because they do kind of have life to them. And then there's the other one where it was like the older women who could do math perfectly if you gave it to them in like a grocery store context.
Yeah.
But if you just gave them the math problem, they'd be like, I don't know math.
Yeah. But I feel like that's one of the interesting things about it is like being able to apply real life situations to what you're doing, and it's not just like a theoretical thing. It's like this is like a concrete example of how I would use it in this situation.
Yeah.
I think the one that really connected, like with what we talk about, was the one about the conservation experiment, the Piaget conservation experiment that like, I've seen a lot.
Yep.
But done with the Senegal children, which I've also learned about them, like that culture and how they speak and how they think and how they only think like concretely what's happening right now. So the way that they were wording the question, it was like not making sense to them, and so they were like, "Oh, they're wrong."
Yeah.
When really you just need to reword the question.
Yeah,
I think that's so
exactly.
relevant to what we talk about.
Yeah. And how language affects our understanding of things, and how sometimes like some languages don't have the same words for concepts that we might in English, and so it might not come across in the explanation or the question that they're asking.
Definitely all based on like context.
Context.
Yes.
Basic on context and everything.
It's all about content. One of the questions was like, why is it important to contextualize your questions? And it's like, I don't even know how to begin answering that. Because you should. Because otherwise there's no point. Or it said, why should you know the purpose of your assessment? And it's like, if you don't know the purpose, then you're just testing to test. And
there's no reason.
What's the reason?
Yeah, definitely. I really liked the prompts because after those readings, I was like, it got me thinking so much about the case study thing that we're doing, and how I was just thinking of the lessons as just like making up a lesson and teaching it. I wasn't thinking of it as like, this is something that the students are going to learn that's going to be important to them, that will connect to their lives and like make a difference for them in their education. And I think it just kind of brought everything together for me, and especially like chapter 5, where it was talking about planning and how planning is so crucial. And so I guess just not planning for the sake of planning, like assessments for the sake of just testing, but rather for the sake of like student development, cognitively, emotionally, and otherwise, you know.
Have you guys, out of curiosity, have you selected your case study?
Yes, roughly.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Okay.
Well, at first, Naomi and I, because we have 2 girls who barely speak English, and we were like, how can we choose them if we can't communicate with them?
Yeah.
We were like, let's choose the other ones who we can actually like have a conversation with and get to know more. But then it's like, no, that's not the point. You know?
Yeah.
We're supposed to be learning.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was very clear. We're like, okay, we're gonna be with the two girls who are barely speaking at all.
Yeah. Which means you kind of
Which
have a
is
harder
hard,
job. Yeah. But at the same time, it might be a more rewarding and like challenging experience, which could help you in the future instead of just having a student who speaks English fluently and doesn't have as much trouble coming up with the vocabulary. So I don't know. It was hard for us, I think, to tell what tier they were on specifically because I know that pretty much all the students in our group were very talkative. They would speak in English fluently and hold a conversation, and they used some like higher level vocabulary for their grade, and so it didn't seem to me like any of them really struggled conversationally. Now, like academically, like using academic English, it could be different, but I guess that's something we're gonna find out from the ELL specialist and from just continuing to work with them. I guess one of my fears is that they're not going to like show up again, and then I'll just be like, oh, I was so like ready to do this. But like they said, it's something we should just expect because that's the population we're working with. So.
It's hard for me to think about like connecting all this talk about assessment to our interactions with these students because I don't think about assessing them. Like we're not testing. I don't really, unless I'm missing
like
this
what
part
is
of it.
Yeah, it's almost like what's the point of assessing them when like I feel like an after school program, yes, is supposed to be like educational and everything depending on what it is, but also I don't know, I guess it's like breaking down our understanding of what an assessment is because when we think of an assessment we think of like a piece of paper that has a bunch of questions that you have to write down like answers to, but really, an assessment can be as simple as just like asking a student a question and checking for their understanding.
That's what I thought. Check for understanding and kind of just like observing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I have all the forms in here, all the assessments, everything for the case study, and so it's like, oh my gosh, there's like so much, and how do we like do this, and then like go and do this, and like think about all the things. There's so much.
And I feel like rather than just sitting and filling those things out like while you're observing the other person teach or something, it's almost better to just wait to do that till you're observing in their classroom because if you're focusing on teaching while you're teaching and making that as personal and meaningful as you can during that time, like that's the most important thing. The most important thing is not you getting all this information about the child that you're working with, but rather giving all of the students a good experience.
Yeah, seriously.
And you can always like read over those forms beforehand and kind of keep it in mind, the back corner of your mind, and then like when we're done with the practicum, just like jot it all down.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, do we want to talk about the chapter 5 specifically? Sure. Chapter 4?
Just anything.
4. I feel like we kind
4.
of skipped chapter 4.
Yeah, we did.
There was more in it,
Do we want to go A, B, C, D?
Well, I mean, we don't need to read our posts because, I mean, they've been posted.
Okay.
But
like last quarter, we always just read them.
I feel like maybe if you want to pull out like the most important things
Yeah,
that we talked about.
yeah.
Do you want to go in order or?
Sure. I can go first. So, just in case you guys skimmed my post and didn't really read it, my question had to do with classroom observations and academic language. And so, this actually really reminded me of conversations we've had in SPED. Were all three of you in SPED with me?
Not with you.
No.
No? Okay. Have you taken
But
the
we-
SPED
yeah.
class yet? Okay. So, when they kind of talk about, like, when you're writing down observations for special education students, or, like, when you're writing down an observation for a whole message, you want to make sure that it's really just an observation of something concrete that you saw or heard, and it's, like, completely void of any assumptions that you made based on that observation. And so that's a lot of what they talked about in this chapter is same thing with ELLs. You want to make sure you're not letting your background or your assumptions color your observations as a student, which is kind of, I feel like, what this class is all about.
Definitely, definitely. Oh my gosh.
And then the second part, academic language, I just kind of like talked about how it's important to scaffold for students and like give them help on that. But yeah, I thought the classroom observation thing was like huge.
Yeah.
It just connected so many different classes and conversations.
Definitely. Yeah. That reminds me of SCED 480. I'm in it right now, and we're talking about claims versus what is it? Oh, observations versus claims. And observations are just raw data. Like it's just saying, like, the pencil fell off the table. You're not saying the pencil fell off the table because I knocked it with my hand and gravity caused it to like fall to the floor. You're just saying this is what happened. And so I think like that relates a lot to what you're just saying, because you're not like trying to make any assumptions from what you're seeing. You're just looking at it and then going back, and like in our final case study, we're going to look at all of the like theories and things that connect with those like behaviors or different like cultural aspects that we observe. So I don't know. It's just really interesting. I love it.
That's important. Yeah, I feel like I don't see connection to that point, which is weird. But so this is cognitive interviews and think aloud. So these are like, I don't know why I haven't really considered these, but think alouds, like as a student solving a problem. Tell me about what you're thinking, and when you answer a question, let me ask you why you answered that way. And it's like that's so smart. Why don't we do that? Because at the whole beginning of this was about like people, different cultures coming to different answers and all the reasons behind those different answers. And if we can actually ask like how you arrived at that answer, then we can understand where the student's coming from, and then we can figure out how to assess them to fit that, to actually see what their see their knowledge better. So yeah, I thought that was cool. It's like, okay, cognitive interviews, think alouds. Yes, let's do that. Like, don't just give me an answer. Like, tell me like why you got there.
Which I feel like we do a lot of in the math classes that we have to take.
Totally.
Definitely.
Like the what's it called?
Number talks.
Number talks.
Totally.
I haven't taken a math yet.
Math really connects like all of this, because it's like let students let them do it themselves and let them bring their own knowledge to the table first. And it's like everything.
It's my favorite class.
It's so good. Alright, so C, mine was talking about why it's important for teachers to show students how to best respond to assessments. And so, which also really tied into my next chapter 1 too, but I said an example is that last quarter, my friend Natalie, who's in my group, she talked about how her boyfriend grew up in a really poor house and they only wash dishes by hand. And so he took a test that said, like, measure the area of a dishwasher. And he didn't know what it is. He didn't know what it looked like. He's never heard of one. And so when he went to the teacher and asked for help, they couldn't tell him. And so he couldn't complete the problem because there was no context. And so it's like same as asking like a student from Iran, say, okay, if like without giving a picture, saying like, all right, without measuring, what might be your inference on the height of the Liberty Bell? They're like, well, what's a Liberty Bell? It's like it's not giving any contextual knowledge to assisting students and giving them any sort of way they could possibly figure things out, which is super unequitable. And so my whole thing was talking about like providing assessments that have that equitable opportunity for all students to actually answer and not just go, well, I can't do this, like I don't know, so I have to skip it, because that's not fair at all.
Yeah, there's so many assumptions that go behind like whatever the test making process is. I feel like those biases are just so, until sitting down and talking about it and being in these classes that we discuss every day, I never would have thought that like we need to look at the language that we're using and actually consider like, you know, because maybe someone's like a dishwasher, you know, it's like you just assume
everyone has a
everyone
dishwasher.
knows.
or a computer, things like that. And it's like that whole access to technology and just being aware that not everyone is from a white middle class family, you know. But yeah, and let's see, for mine, talking about like becoming. Well, we all talked about how we could become more culturally competent in our classroom. Understanding students' prior knowledge and experience, and how, like, we personally could understand our case studies background. So it was more like of a personal one for me. And so for gaining an understanding of students' prior knowledge, the most simple thing that I could possibly say was, like, talk to them. You know? I feel like that's one of the biggest ways that you get to know a student, and also by talking to like the ELL specialist, their teacher, and looking at like whatever records are available to you, having meetings with families, like doing home visits if that's better for them, and just basically doing everything you can to get to know that student without making judgments about them just because of the way they look or like their socioeconomic status or things like that. And specific to this like case study thing, like I was saying, since we're going to talk to the ELL specialists, that'll help, and their teachers, and mostly I think one of the best ways we can do this, because of the short time that we have, is by having lessons that incorporate things that are universal, like families, because everyone has a family. It's just a different structure. You know, like some people might have foster parents, or some people might have just a mom or a dad, or two moms or two dads, or or co-parenting, and or they might be raised by their grandparents. Like, you never know. And so the way you find out is by bringing up those things that are so universal, and kind of just questioning people about themselves, what they believe in, and what their experiences are, because that's how we learn from other people, instead of just imposing, like, this is how my family is. Like, I grew up with a mom and a dad, and I had a sister, and we all lived in a house, and because that's not the reality for everyone. And so by, like, imposing my own experience onto other people's, like, that's just perpetuating, like, the white-centered system that we live in, and so I feel like just leaving it open-ended is important.
I like that you brought up like universal ideals, because when I think about trying to become culturally competent, it's like I feel like I need to take time to learn about these cultures and the students, which of course I can do, but really it's like that's like a side like job. Like, you research about this place that you're from, and I think of like when I was working with this Spanish-speaking students, and I think, okay, maybe I could learn a little bit more about like the similar culture that these students are coming from, and that would be great. But you're never going to be able to learn about every culture of every student, and it's like obviously they're not all Spanish-speaking. You know, and it's like it's hard to wrap my head around the idea of trying to incorporate other like cultural ideals that I don't know anything about. So like the universal ideas, like, that's a good way to start. I like that.
And like I said, like if you leave it open-ended, then that gives the students a chance to be the teachers.
Exactly.
And then you don't have to like do a bunch of investigation, because they come out with their knowledge, and it's exciting for them to be able to like talk about themselves and their families. And obviously you don't want to pressure them to do that if they're not comfortable with it, because especially if we were to work with students who might have undocumented parents, like they might not be as forthcoming, because that's the way that they've been taught to act just for their family's like safety. So being conscious of that is also important.
Chapter 5.
And more depth.
I mean, there was just the one question for me.
What question?
For chapter 5.
Oh, I thought you meant before we moved on from chapter.
Oh, no. Sorry.
I didn't meant question.
or chapter 4.
Okay.
4.
What stage were you getting?
Because I didn't come with any because I felt like mine all made somewhat sense.
Yeah.
But put sticky notes in here. Oh wait, yeah, I did.
I think one of mine would just be in general, how do we teach to a class and try to learn more about the class while we're focusing on one student specifically? I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense because it's kind of like how do you teach to everybody?
Yeah.
Like with the case study. Like,
Yeah,
Because
because
we give that
20
student extra attention.
that it requires to be able to like complete the study, but also focus on the other students and make them feel
Are you
equally
talking
important.
specifically like about our case
Yeah.
study? Like we want to focus on our one student, but we can't forget about
Yeah,
all
exactly.
the other students in the group. Okay.
Or just in general, like if you're a
Right,
general
right.
ed teacher and you have ELL students in
And
your
you're
classroom.
trying to accommodate them.
Yeah,
but then-
and that takes more work than other students, but then you want to also be able to teach your other students to like add
Yeah.
to the best of your ability, but sometimes it's just like, where do you put your energy?
Yeah.
So
Sweet. Alright.
Yeah, that's a good question.
That's a really good
Because I was thinking about that too. Like, okay, I have a case study student now. I'm going to pay attention to what she's doing,
yeah,
and the other students are just there to
fill out
I mean,
the space.
yeah,
Like, what?
exactly.
know. But
Yeah. Alright, cool.
Cool. Yeah. So my part in chapter 5 has a lot to do with what we already talked about. And the question was just asking how you can measure an ELL's content knowledge, which has a lot to do with assessment.
Yeah.
But one of the things that was a little less related to assessment that I thought was interesting, well, I guess it is related to assessment, but I hadn't heard this part before, was they talked about how you should have an ELL specialist sit down with the student and then ask them questions about like what kind of tests they've taken in the past, and like maybe the student isn't familiar with multiple choice, like
Yeah.
that structure that is kind of the go-to here. So you can kind of learn about what the go-to test strategies were, where they were from, or if they haven't had any like official school experiences, maybe just what kind of experiences they've had outside of school where they felt like their knowledge has been put to the test.
Right.
And then you can use that to kind of help accommodate any assessments you give them in the future. Like if they're super unfamiliar with multiple choice, especially if it's like language multiple choice, you could give them like a dictionary or a glossary to work with or something, stuff like that. So I thought that was cool. But the rest was like assessment stuff.
that's a good point that I haven't really thought about either. Those specific steps, like
Yeah.
just sit down and ask what kind of assessments they had before, like how were they. Like those aren't things that I think about needing to be done until we look at it.
Yeah.
I wonder if that could be like another muddy question. Like, what are the steps? Is there like a right way to develop background knowledge about your students? And like, what do you do personally, and what do you let other people do, or have other people do? You know, because it's like that place between like being their general ed teacher, or if you're the ELL specialist, then that's like your job to go do those things. I don't know. It's just like so complex to me because in a perfect world, like I would just be able to do everything, like know about how to do everything, but that's not going to happen. So, yeah.
And what's the student going to be able to tell you about?
Yeah. Yeah. Is there like
24, 30.
like is there an extent to which like
Yeah.
you can question the child?
Yeah.
Because
That's a good question. I like
Yeah.
that question.
because the kid isn't going to know every single
Yeah.
thing about their background or want to share every single thing about their background.
So kind of like how do we go about gathering background knowledge?
Like
And what are we
conversations.
responsible
Yeah.
for?
Okay. Sweet.
It's a big
and it's overwhelming because, I don't know, you think about all of the things that go into making your student successful, and yes, it's so important to know their background before you like get into everything, but then there's just this rush to get through so much curriculum and like all of that it's like, how do you like start from where you absolutely know they are and like keep going? And is that the point of assessments? Because then if they don't do well, then you see that like they aren't ready to do that, but then like how do you do that for every single student? It's just so complicated.
I definitely have my moments where I'm like, maybe I'll just be a park ranger.
Yeah.
But then I like go to the practicum.
I know.
Like,
Oh, I love it.
it's like stressful beforehand, but then you get there and you're like, it's just about connecting with these students and like helping them learn.
So sometimes I wish we didn't get into so much like
like theory and like all of the complexities of it, but it's
taking the fun away.
yeah, exactly. But I love that, and my
Yeah.
gosh, when Joy Nyberg like almost started crying because she was like
Oh
so
my
happy
gosh.
about how she saw us like
Yeah.
in the classroom, I was like, oh, like she knows, like, and I started getting emotional, and I was like about to cry, and it is really cool to feel that like calling when you're in that classroom and just feel like this is where I'm supposed to be, but also to see other people doing that is just incredible, and it makes me so happy because we need teachers like that so desperately, and I just like, oh my gosh, now I'm getting emotional. I don't know, I just love that. It makes me so happy.
Oh my gosh, B.
Oh, me. I kind of talked about mine at the beginning, but this got me. Okay, so it says, why is it important to think about the purpose of an assessment? How will this help you in your interaction with your case study student? So this got me into thinking like about our assessments with our students and how I don't think that we're like assessing them. I kind of think that we're observing them, and that we are seeing how they learn. We are doing this to help us learn to become teachers.
Yeah.
So we're assessing them to see how their learning style affects our instructional strategies, right? So it's like, I want to think about checking for her understanding and assessing her to like help me rather than like get her to be at some point.
Yeah.
That's not the point of this, right? Like, so I just feel like in my interactions with her, or if it becomes another student, whatever, it's more about like checking for her understanding and seeing how where she's at like will affect what I'm gonna do next, and like affect how I would teach it in the future. I think is important.
Cool. Mine was talking about, it said like discuss what an effective program looks like, and so I kind of went on to say that like teachers who are confident and understand like the ins and outs, everything of the curriculum and content, like are good for having a diverse or a differentiated class. But then teachers that said know how to assess students are more for an effective program. So I said that like assessments should be not just how much information students can regurgitate or how much they memorize, but it should be like just assessing how much they can actually critically think about something, how much they can problem solve, how they can like discuss. So it's like an effective program is assessing students on how they get somewhere instead of just if they get there.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest thing for me. It's like
That's a
really good way to say it.
Yeah, and it made me happy because then I was like, oh gosh, I would love a classroom like that. Like
I know.
it's not just participation. It's like, are you trying? Can you do it? Like it's okay if you don't get to the end, but like let's see if we can get as far as we can.
Yeah.
The
Sounds
climb. I was like, yeah, number 5.
Bloom's taxonomy.
Oh.
Those higher order thinking skills.
Yeah.
Sign to the huts.
I had never learned about that until this course.
Yeah, me neither.
Just so everyone knows.
Yes.
I think I briefly went over Bloom's taxonomy, but not like the concept of
It was like in sketch.
using
Lauren
it.
Oak did a project on it, and I was like, she's really excited about this. But I totally forgot.
She's excited about everything.
She's great.
So, I already mentioned a lot of this, like the section on planning and how you plan your time with your students and how you plan it with your future students. Again, it's just like reiterating the point that students have different learning styles and we need to consider not only that, but also the needs that they may have, like the special needs that they specifically have. And I don't know. I guess just remembering that any planning you do has to consider all of those different factors that go into your student being able to not just like reach a point like we've been talking about, but like be able to do the work and understand what they're doing.
Yes.
I'm so weird.
It's fine. I just had this long train of thought.
Yeah.
Don't know where it went.
No. Derailed.
I wanted to say something about your post before you go about the last question. About doing well on tests
Yeah.
and not even like really trying and like okay yeah
That was me. Yeah.
so yeah I just thought that was like so like yeah we can be like yep I took that test and it was fine and I didn't even study because and I said kind of the same I mean I didn't say I didn't study but I said like I did well on tests and any problems I had with the tests weren't because I didn't understand the content but because they're like dry and like
That's
hammer,
how it
like,
was.
you know.
Yep.
But I'm like just have taken that for granted so often that we didn't need to think about that kind of thing. I mean, because everything was biased towards us.
Yeah, exactly. And
So-
that's so funny to think about because when you're a kid, you're like, oh, everybody's taking the same test. We're all in the same class. Like, we know all the same stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's not...
equitable.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not the point. It's the fact that the way the test is set up is to benefit middle class white people.
That could be a muddy question. Why is it like that? How come it's been like that for so long?
Because white people created the test.
But like, there's so much change going on.
I know.
How come it doesn't change there? We have
I
a woman
agree.
over 20 now. What's
Yeah.
going on?
It's changing right now.
Or
We're
Getting ready.
Yeah.
we're in the middle of it.
Yeah. And
I
I feel
mean, I
like...
was kind of wondering about that too. Like, how long have people been talking about this kind of thing?
Yeah.
Like, how long have educators been discussing these things for like? We haven't seen this change. Like it's slowly happening.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we're trying to like integrate these ideas all the time. But how long has this been a conversation that hasn't been being accomplished?
Can we talk?
Yeah.
Can we do that one?
Yeah, definitely.
What's
Yeah.
the time? We're on the black screen.
So, going off of that, I wonder if it's like there's the fact that there's actually been inaction on the part of like people creating the tests, or if it's like inaction on the part of teachers to try to change that because they just view it as like this is just required and so it's gonna happen whether they like it or not. And I don't know what exactly it is. It could be a combination of a ton of factors, which I feel like is part of it. But I also think like right now we're in the midst of like a cultural revolution almost. If you look at like all of the different things that are going on, like the Black Lives Matter movement and like just the things that have been going on at school with like the stuff that's been centered around like racial tension and racism on campus and things like that. And I feel like that's really bringing to light a lot of the inequities that are like here right now that we're still perpetuating in the system that we are in. And so I think it's important to like recognize, yes, change is happening, and it's sometimes discouraging to not see it happen right away because, you know, like I remember taking the WASL and just being like, okay, this sucks, but I have to do it.
Yeah.
And I would always do well on it, but because of like my having ADHD, that made it really difficult for me to actually go through the process of taking the test. The content itself I knew, but like I needed to move and I had to sit still for multiple hours, and that was not easy.
Yeah.
So I was allowed to like chew gum, and then I would like tap my pencil on the desk, or I'd like tap my feet, and I was like one of those people that got yelled at by other students because they thought it was really distracting. I'm like, I'm sorry, I have to move. And so it was like,
So it just brings in other like not even
Yeah.
you didn't have any language differences,
Yeah.
but you had
And it's biased towards
behavioral
me.
differences.
Yeah,
It's still
exactly.
biased towards you.
Yeah. I just think that's so
against
funny.
you.
Yeah. Because there's so many different factors we don't consider like that. And so, I don't know. I never thought about it because I always did well. And that was the whole point to me, was to be able to do well. It wasn't about the actual test taking itself.
Yeah.
And I feel like my teachers just didn't care enough to, well, maybe that's not fair. Maybe they didn't notice how much I was distracted and how hard it was for me to take those tests. And so I feel like if they had, maybe they would have like tried to help me out in some ways. But also my school was just like, if you didn't finish it, I think this might have just been elementary school, then you could like go into the library and finish it. Yeah, I think the like timed aspect of it is more important in high school, because then you're doing like the SATs and stuff like that, and oh my gosh, that was just a whole other process that killed me.
The
Like,
SATs.
yeah, if I had enough time to take the test and take my time doing it, I would have gotten 100% on all of the sections. But because of the time constraint and my needing to like process things in a different way and not being able to do that, like it was very, very discouraging.
Yeah.
Right?
So.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so my boyfriend, he grew up in China, so they don't have standardized tests, I don't think. I don't really know, I'm really confused. But he's super dyslexic. Like, he was the one kid in his school that didn't have to take another language because he could barely pick up English.
Wow.
And so he was just like tests like that always make me so angry because he's a smart dude.
Yeah.
But he's really, really slowly.
And then that affects your entire life. Like, if you think about how much test scores affect your entire life, like, they can prevent you from graduating high school.
Yeah.
They can prevent you from getting into the college you want to get into. Like, it's ridiculous how much weight we put on testing. And that kind of testing specifically, you know?
Yeah.
Because we're talking about all of these, like, authentic assessments and things like that, but it's not being done at the higher level. And especially when it's so important and so crucial to, like, you're getting to where you need to go in life. So, I don't know. And it's like your story about the teacher who said you're never going to be good at math or something like that.
My gosh,
Like, basically, it's like, if you aren't good at taking standardized tests, you're dumb and you're going to be a failure in life. Like, that's like the underlying message behind it, which I hate because it's not true. It's just not true.
Yeah, and it was 5th grade too. Like, basically, yesterday in class, Joy Nyberg was asking if there was a way we could make movement part of our lesson, and so Elizabeth was like, "Oh, I'm going to make the students do up, down, sideways."
Yeah,
so
like on their chest.
Yeah, and she said, "What if instead you have them stand up if they know the information?" And I was like, "Well, we're not going to do that."
Yeah.
And I said, when I was in 5th grade, my teacher, it was like a test. It was, he said, if you got like everyone stood up. He's like, if you got a 10 out of 20, like 1 out of 20, sit down. And I was, if you got a 0 out of 20, it was the first question, sit down. And I was that kid, and he made everyone look at me and said, "This is what happens when you don't try hard." And I always will remember
that. Just makes me want to go punch that teacher in the face. Like,
it's like it's when I do Compass Campus discussions too. That's what I bring up first.
Yeah.
But it's like it was 5th grade, and already I was bad at math then, and so I was like, I was never gonna be good at math. He told me right then and there. Everyone else could tell me, and I was also the kid. I was like, I'm gonna be an architect. He's like, well, you have to be good at math. And it was another group discussion. Like, all right, cool. So, and I still haven't taken the math class yet because I'm so scared of math.
No, don't even worry about it. It's so
the
much.
math classes will they blew my mind.
Yeah,
I think that I had
to take
flipped
math.
my idea.
I had to
about
take 112 twice.
elementary math.
So when I finally finished it, I was like,
So
no, I can
many
take it.
people need to do that.
Yeah.
Don't you know?
And it's okay. It was just like, it's one of those things, like, you're not good at math in 5th grade, you'll never be good at math ever.
Yeah.
And then that's still
feeling
embedded in your in your self-esteem.
22 now.
Yeah, like
It was over 10 years ago. Oh gosh.
Yeah, when I read your sentence saying like taking the SAT without studying, and I was like, whoa! And then I thought, I probably didn't really study for
I did
that
not.
either. I did like average, fine. You know, I'm here in college.
yeah.
It's like I would never think about how easy all of that has been.
Yeah. And I feel like sometimes when I think about it, the only way that studying might have helped me would be to understand the structure of the test and how to get through the actual test taking, not the content.
Exactly.
Because that's what I had to do on the math section, because I remember I downloaded an app because I did so terribly on the first time I took the SAT on the math, just because the structure of it, I was like, I'm going to be like methodical, get all the answers right that I can, but really it's like go through, do the ones that you can do the fastest, and then go back to the other ones. And it was just like so stressful, and that was the only one that I had to train myself to know how to take it. So
that's where that SAT thing comes in, where it's like a skipped one doesn't affect your grade at all, but a wrong one takes points.
It's like it takes away a quarter point, and
dumb.
that adds up. You know,
So fast.
I know.
So dumb.
People comparing SAT scores, though,
That kills me. I'm just like, it means nothing. It really means nothing.
Oh, Lord.
But you wonder why universities are having
Yeah.
issues with diversity when
Seriously,
Oh,
though.
there you go.
it's
Yeah.
all
Oh
based
my
on these
gosh.
SAT scores, and the scholarships are based on
Yep.
SAT scores.
Yep.
So the people who actually need the help
No,
getting into
but-
college
but-
can't even
But
get it.
scholarships are given to people of different color. That's their
That's their
argument.
rebuttal. And it's like, no, actually 40% of the scholarships that are taken by or supposed to be allotted to people of color, I think are taken by white people. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Statistics.
Or no, they're
I
40%
just heard
more
people
likely.
complain about scholarships, not, oh, it's like white people don't get any scholarships because
It's not true. It's not true.
Boo.
Yeah, that was I think that's what it was. It wasn't that. It was 40%. People of color are 40% less likely to get a scholarship than people who are white, who have the same qualifications. That's terrible. That's just awful. And then there are people that are trying to justify it with that, oh, well, there are no scholarships specifically for white people, and blah, blah, blah. It's every scholarship is specifically for white people. It's just people of color just get what they can. Yeah.
Do you need to go to class, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
What
was
should
gonna
we
say.
But, I mean, we
Yeah.
basically wrapped it up. So.
Yeah.
I have to go, Joy. I need to have some 8 minutes.
Yeah.
We love you.
I think my posture is
Yeah, I know.
I know. I keep
Me too.
looking
I'm
over
just
there. I'm like, oh.
I always I want a bracelet that just says posture on it.
mine.
When I was a
Tattoo
tattoo.
it on yourself.
That's what
Bye,
I
have a good weekend, dude.
Bye. Thanks,
Have fun.
guys. See you around.
Bye.